Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Got Eric Decker joining me on the Hang on Ron Johnson segment. Looking forward to sitting down with Deck. There's going to be a 2-day event. Decker's interview went so long, we had to split it up into 2 days, but this guy is extremely interesting, and he has a lot to say, but also some Gopher football content talk that I'm not sure a lot of people know. And then also, Eric Decker has an idea about, because he's naked in a couple pictures, and he has a reason why, and he explains that coming up next on the Ron Johnson Show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. And it starts now.
Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. I want everybody to know this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Just make every moment more. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/Locked On to get started. Trust me, it's really simple. You also have the app after that. There's a lot of first bets you can get, offers from Locked On. But make sure you visit FanDuel.com/Locked On. And, of course, Vikings, Buccaneers, it's up and loaded, people. So make sure you check that out as I bring Sam Extraman to the show, my producer. Looking forward to today's show, Sam. We got Eric Decker joining us for a 2-day event. I like that format. We've kind of talked about that. I know for those everydayers, the format is going to change moving forward. I think I want to get enough content out there for people to be able to consume it long term, and I think we may give them too many guests during the week. I think a once a week kind of format maybe fits better to allow people to watch just one good podcast for the week, kind of an evergreen interview with an upcoming opponent as well. Talk a little Gopher football, a little Vikings football, and then, of course, the Minnesota football party and some other things. You guys can catch me on those shows. We're going to definitely download and discuss Vikings and Gophers football all week. That's not going to change on Locked On Sports Minnesota. But I'm Ron Johnson. That's Sam Extra, my producer. And Sam, it's game week, and I'm not gonna lie, it felt weird even like yesterday on Monday, because Monday technically is game week, and then you see the players practicing. You see TJ Hawkinson, all 53 guys showed up to practice, so there's no ear infections, no back injuries. Everybody's out there, Sam. But it felt weird, like it still does. I don't know, until Sunday morning when I'm headed to the stadium. And I know you're used to this. You see the omelet station, or kind of bacon and potatoes with a little egg. Even then, to me, like even when I do the pregame show, it doesn't feel like football until football gets going. And I think that's what every player right now is thinking with the Minnesota Vikings, because they didn't play in the preseason like a lot of other teams did with their starters. Aaron Rodgers played. You know, you look at so many starters that went out there and played, but the Minnesota Vikings didn't do it. Now, it worked last year, so why change it if you're 13-4? I'm gonna start there, Sam. Are you concerned at all with the Vikings being one of the few teams to not play pretty much any starters in the preseason?
Not necessarily, Ron. On offense, I think that they got a lot of reps last year. There are not as many changes on that side of the ball. Defense, might have liked to see some more of those starters trying to get used to this new Flores defense, because mid-season last year, we were hearing from people that, well, it takes a while to learn this Donatel defense. That's why we're struggling. Well, maybe it would have helped if you'd have played in the preseason. So I don't want to hear that again. But Ron, we talked about this with the Gophers. Doesn't it feel like kind of a big mystery? Like we don't know how they're going to react to this Flores defense. Is it going to work? Is it going to have the effect that we hope it has? On offense, they bring in Josh Oliver. They extend C.J. Ham. Is the offense actually going to change a little bit? More run heavy this year? We don't know. Feels like, again, we're going in with these mysteries that have yet to be solved about how this team is going to look.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know. You don't know how this team's going to look. Offensively, I think we kind of know. It's going to look a little bit like what we saw in the preseason, but with more trinkets, more flashy pre-snap stuff. Because Kevin O'Connell mentioned that, like, some of the pre-snap reads, he's very interested to see how Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins handles them. Some of the post-snap reads, when you think about Cooper Kupp and what he did with the Rams and how they talked about so many choice routes and so many options. I talked to BC Johnson, former Vikings receiver, and he confirmed, like, yeah, when we got our iPads, we had a ton of stuff on there that was Rams offense. It was Rams offense. It was choice routes. It was, hey, here's the coverage. You have 2 or 3 possible routes. And for people to understand that, it's honestly really simple. The 2 things that need to happen for that choice route to work: the offensive line has to give Kirk Cousins time, and the receiver and the quarterback have to be seeing the same thing. The reason I say that is if it's man, 9 times out of 10 in man, the receiver is going to break out. You can't sit, and you don't want to go inside, because then usually there's some other stuff inside to help out in man coverage. When you think about zone, usually there's a guy high. In zone, you don't want to move in the zone. You just want to hook up. The last one is man, but it's kind of like shading man and saying, I'm going to force you to somebody inside. Now, if there's man and he's playing you outside and you break in, that could be the third part of the route where we see like a slant or some kind of in route. But 9 times out of 10, you're not going that way because they're forcing you inside for a reason, because there's a linebacker waiting to pick it off. We remember that from the Falcons game years ago when Kirk Cousins had this big play that was supposed to be the big trick play of the game that Mike Zimmer had drawn up. And we start off the Falcons game. Falcons had not won a game all season. And they started off with an interception, I think, to the house. And that's what happens when you don't understand that the reason why you feel like this guy coming across the middle is wide open, because there's another guy on the other side waiting for you to think the same thing, and he's acting like he's doing something else. So in that aspect, that's what the choice route is. For those watching on YouTube, for those watching on Amazon Fire and Roku, I did the air quotes because it's to understand what the coverage is, and that's what the quarterback, receiver have to be on the same page, offensive line. You said great unknown, Sam, and here's where I go with another great unknown. Nobody knows what the Buccaneers are going to be. Honestly, you got Rachaad White at running back. You got Baker Mayfield for the first time at quarterback. You got O'Keefe starting at tight end, which we kind of know what O'Keefe's going to be. Their other tight end is Cade Otton. You look at the offensive line, is not other than Tristan Wirfs, not a lot of names where you're like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. Receiver wise, you got Mike Evans, but rumor is he might want to be out of there. I don't blame him. So clearly something's not great at practice that he's not happy with, but that's the problem when you go from a Tom Brady to a Baker Mayfield. It changes. You got Chris Godwin, who's fast. You got Trey Palmer, the rookie out of Nebraska. So you do have some pieces to this puzzle, but at the end of the day, this is like a 2 tight end starting, 2 receiver, 1 running back type of offense. O'Keefe, we know, can play a little fullback, so maybe he'll motion back and be a lead blocker. But Sam, these are both 2 unknown teams. Going into this game, this is my thought on the Vikings offense. Just score. But it's not that simple. You have to score at a high clip just in case your defense is pretty much what it was last year. For the defense, you have to get after Baker Mayfield. You have to make Baker Mayfield so uncomfortable that, because when he gets comfortable, he's good. He's cocky and he's good. And that's what you don't want, is a cocky, comfortable Baker. We remember the dances Baker Mayfield did. We remember the Ohio State game. We remember the, putting on the book bag of the other team. Sorry. That was Drew Lock. That was Baker Mayfield. But Baker Mayfield probably did something similar to it. But you cannot let him get comfortable. When he gets comfortable and he's feeling confident, he's actually dangerous. He's not Russell Wilson dangerous, but he's dangerous. And so I'd say early on, that's what I'm going to be watching. How much quarterback pressure are they getting on the quarterback? How effective is Danielle Hunter and maybe this new look defense? And then where are they using these safeties? You got so many safeties heading into week 1. Not much has changed. N'Keal Harry is back on the practice squad. So not what we thought was going to happen, which is maybe another running back, another receiver, and then cut one of the safeties. They're going into it with all these safeties. So 1, these safeties all made special teams. But 2, there has to be some 3 safety packages. You don't have this many safeties for 4 guys to just sit on the bench for the majority of the game and just play special teams. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Brian Flores unleashes, I guess we'll call it, unleashes this group of guys. Right. But other than that, Sam, here's some guys that one guy that I think I am going to keep my eye on for this game. And my guy is KJ Osborne. KJ Osborne, because I think the Buccaneers are probably sitting back saying, we got to take Justin Jefferson out of this. They don't have Dalvin Cook, so we want them to run the ball. You don't have a guy that we're scared of in Alexander Mattison, which we'll talk about that in Daily 3. But Justin Jefferson, like Jordan Addison, prove it to us. Your tight ends, prove it to us. TJ Hawkins, you're making a ton of money, so let's see what you can do. But Justin Jefferson, we know can kill us. We know what kind of weapon that is. My guy to watch is going to be KJ Osborne on this Minnesota Vikings team. As far as the Bucs offense, I don't really know, but I'm keeping an eye on Baker Mayfield. I think everybody is, but is he the quarterback of the future for them? Probably not, but you never know. I don't know what are one or two guys you're watching before we get into this Eric Decker interview.
Yeah, let me add some context to Mayfield. I looked up his stats under pressure the last 3 seasons. Passer rating under pressure last year ranked 25th. Year before that, 26th. Year before that, 21st. So you boiled it down pretty effectively right there. You got to put pressure on him, and he's going to be inaccurate. He's going to make a lot of mistakes, and he's been mistake-prone his entire career. And the last time he played at US Bank Stadium, he was all over the place. I think that the recipe there is pretty simple. And you're going to be throwing, these 7-man blitzes at him, or at least showing 7 men and then dropping a couple and bringing your nickel corner, coming from every direction. That's a great way to create turnovers, be positive in the take-give. So I'm really excited for that. But I'm excited too, Ron, to see the diversity in these schemes. Like there's 48 active on game day. 3 of those are special teamers. So you got 45 players. How many guys are they going to incorporate? Like on this defense, you can make a case that everybody is almost going to see some action. You're going to rotate linebackers a little bit, get Ivan Pace and Asamoah involved, and obviously Jordan Hicks. You're going to be probably using a lot of safeties. Are you going to bring in another cornerback to rotate in? Like there's just a lot of guys that are going to have their fingerprints on this game. It feels like to me, they're not just going to roll with the starting 11. They're going to be rotating in and out a lot. So what are these little sub packages that they're going to use? And then on offense too, are they going to get into the Johnny Munts of the world? Are they going to, do some creative stuff with Brandon Powell? I just think there's going to be a lot of diversity in the scheme and the personnel that I'm excited to see.
Yeah, and for this, Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, their offense, like we said, it's a great unknown. What is not unknown about this Buccaneers team, and this is what could get scary and challenging, their defense still has names of names. Like you got Vita Vea, you got Kalijah Kancey, you still got Devin White, you got Levante David, you got Shaquille Barrett. So their linebackers, their linebackers are still guys. Like they still have guys there. You have Antoine Winfield on the back end. You have Ryan Neal, who came over from the Seahawks, started 10 games for the Seahawks. So they have some names. Their corners, not a bunch of guys that you would recognize right away, but they've played some time in the NFL. When you talk about Carlton Davis III, 6 years, played at Auburn. So definitely a guy that, has some experience. You also have Jamel Dean played at Auburn as well. So I don't know if they love Auburn cornerbacks, but they have 2 Auburn cornerbacks. Both have been with the Buccaneers this entire time. So you're looking at a 5-year and a 6-year vet. So they're not young back there. When you talk about the Minnesota Vikings, the Caleb Evanses, the Andrew Booth Juniors, these unknown young cornerbacks other than Byron Murphy Jr. So you're looking at the tail of the tape. You can't just count the Buccaneers out. Like I think a lot of people have, because the world is saying the Buccaneers can't win, but the Buccaneers aren't feeling that way. They're not tanking, I don't think, I don't think anybody thinks they can be worse than the Cardinals. So there's no point in truly tanking. But this defense, I think, can stop some people. And so this offense for the Vikings can be very efficient. But let's not forget, this defense is still a tough, hard-nosed group. The funny thing is, like, Will Ghostin right now, because Logan Hall they have as the starter. Will Ghostin was the starter, so I'm wondering what's going on there. Did he just get outplayed on the D-line by Logan Hall? It's very, especially Logan Hall being the younger kid out of Houston. Only played 1 year last year for the Bucs. So maybe because we know Will Ghostin is older. Like he's towards the end of his career. He's been in the league for 11 years. So it could be one of those, hey, vet, we're going to keep you around. You're a good piece of this puzzle, but we have a young guy we think we're going to start off with for this. So Will Golston is on the roster, not a starter as of now, but they're going to rotate. So again, they have some names in there, and they have some veterans in that room helping these young guys out. Well, now it's time to get to this Eric Decker interview. And whenever you can sit down with a legend like that, I mean, he's one of the best Gopher receivers in the history of Gopher football. But before we get to this Eric Decker interview, we got a word from our sponsors.
Football starts in 2 days, Ron. Thursday night football, Lions and Chiefs. It's coming up, and FanDuel's the best place to bet football. And they've got great new promotions to prove it. First of all, if you're a new customer, bet 5, get 200. It's as easy as that. You bet 5, they give you $200 in bonus bets straight to your account, and those are guaranteed. And all customers using FanDuel, you bet 5, you also become eligible for $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's the new home of NFL Sunday Ticket. Watch every game in every market. So now's the best time to join FanDuel. Take advantage of the promotions and bet football this season at America's #1 sportsbook. It's a very easy-to-use app. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon as well to get started. FanDuel.com/lockedon and check out the ways to wager. I mean, just go to the Vikings-Bucks game, click through hundreds of options to wager on just that one game at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL.
Well, now it's time for the Hanging with Ron Johnson segment, and this one is a fun one, a special one. I get to talk to my boy, a guy that I saw when he was a freshman, and I told the coaches then, this guy's going to be good. Eric Decker, Gophers wide receiver, NFL wide receiver, male model, married to Jesse James Decker, country singer. Eric Decker is one of the top Gopher receivers in Gopher football history. When you talk about yards, stats, touchdowns, overall, he was on the Mount Rushmore of Gopher football when they voted for the top 4 receivers. It was Eric Decker, Tyler Johnson, Rashad Bateman, and somehow I'm very thankful I ended up on that list. But Eric Decker, man, thanks for joining me on the Ron Johnson Show and the Hanging with Ron Johnson segment. First, I just want to jump out there, man. When you came from Cold Spring, in your mind, did you think like, hey, I can end up, because I saw it. I don't know if I told you, but I know I told Coach C, I told Coach Mason, I saw you, I think it was like bowl game practice your freshman year. I saw you run a route, and I'm like, man, this kid's good. And did you ever think that you would be in the position you were in as far as like one of the best Gopher wide receivers ever?
You know, honestly, coming from a small town, and my story is I was about to go to a Division III school until I got a one-day invite for the camp, and Coach Mason offered me a scholarship. But like at that time, transitioning to college, like my mentality was I'm just a small town kid. And I think it took me that first year to kind of get hit, rattle around a little bit, really learn what the physicality of Big Ten football is to say, okay, can I survive? Because I remember in off season, it's 15 below, I'm going to winter workouts, and I'm challenging myself. Do I really want to do this? And I think that was kind of a defining moment for me, is like, yeah, you got to stick this out. You got to fight through some adversity. And I think as I got closer to my second year into it, because I redshirted, I started to see, okay, I can fit in. I can compete with these guys. And, my thing has always been to outwork people. And that's kind of what I've leaned on, was just to like grind every day and just kind of stack those bricks. And so I think by that time going into this season, I felt, okay, encouraged that I could hold my own.
And when you look at your career, I think Peyton Manning did a lot for it, showing up in Denver early on. Nobody knew what the Denver Broncos and Tim Tebow were going to be, but everybody saw what Peyton Manning was. And then everybody realized, like, wow, this Eric Decker guy is good. What do you remember most about that when Peyton Manning joined you?
Yeah. We had kind of an up and down season before. Kyle Orton actually was a starter, and I was actually having a pretty good year. But as a team, we were struggling a little bit. So they made the transition to Tebow, and, the offense completely changed. Almost went to just a run style offense. And, that season we still had success. I mean, a lot of crazy stories, comebacks, made it to the playoff, beat the Steelers in the first round. And then, the next year, John Elway was the GM at the time, made the decision to bring in Peyton Manning. I think that just changed the landscape of the facility, of the organization, because we had a really good defense. That's what really kept us in a lot of games and won us a lot of games the year prior. But you could tell that just the confidence and the work ethic was that much stronger when he comes in, because you're like, all right, we got a legit shot here. We got a lot of young talent on the offensive side. We just got to put the pieces together. And that offseason leading up was really exciting, because we flew to North Carolina to work out with them, got to Denver early, and just the way he worked tremendously helped Damaris and myself in kind of our early career.
And I coached Peyton when he was with the coach for 2 years under Tony Dungy, so I know a lot of the Peytonisms.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the dry humor stuff. But when you talk about Peyton on the field and as a receiver, like I remember talking to Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison and Antonio and Anthony Gonzalez about this, about like how long do you guys wait? Because I know when he comes to the line of scrimmage sometimes, and there's more of the coach, I don't know if he had you guys do this in Denver, but they all put their outside foot up so that they could watch him. Where we grew up, where your inside foot was up when you're a receiver, because you're going to run a 3-step slant. Well, the Colts ran a 4-step slant. I don't know if that kind of changed in Denver, where you started running 4-step slants, 6-step bangs, stuff like that. Bang post, for people that know it's a quick post. I know it's a Peyton thing. It's an NFL thing, but I know Peyton loved it. But when you talk about that, like Peyton coming to the line of scrimmage, right away, he's scrapping the player. He's going to can the play, can. How hard was that early on for you to like sit there and wait for him to go through all his stuff before he got to your play?
Yeah, you got antsy. I think that's what you kind of worked out in training camp, because we would have a walkthrough before the walkthrough just to go through, like you're saying, these things. And he would not even call a play, but he'd be, he just kind of like try to intimidate the defense. And you're jumping off sides. He's like, what's the play? What are you going to run? What was the play? Just kind of barking at you. And that was, I think, what separated us, right? Was, we had a 10-play package, and it had names, numbers, codes, everything that made us play really fast. And then there was times where a play was called and he's at the line of scrimmage, and it was all audible, dummy stuff, just to kind of figure out the coverage was. As you got more reps with it, the more comfortable you got. And that was really, kind of to my favor, because for me, I'm not the most explosive, just freaking nature like Demaryius Thomas was. I had to kind of outthink people, find the open zones, all route running stuff. And so I thrived in that system. And, it just made us play fast. We grinded people down. And it was honestly, once you got comfortable, entertaining, just watching the defenses freak out and like try to make their own adjustments. And by the end of it, they're just playing soft coverage, because they're like, all right, we'll just back off a little bit. And that's when we kind of just dink and dunked all the way down the field.
The funniest thing, because you say that, like I remember like one of those walkthroughs before the walkthrough, because we would be in the indoor in Indianapolis for training camp, and the offense would go through a walkthrough first. And I'll never forget, I think we did like one play, but one play took like 7 minutes, because he had to keep going over it, and he had to keep telling the guys like this was. And at one point, Jeff Saturday, the center, just sat on the ground. It was like, man, I'm not standing here for this. Like, come on, like what are you doing? Like, we get it. Like the corner, or because he wanted to make the nickel the mic, and he's trying to explain to the offensive line why. Like, this is going to be the mic, and so then he's counting for them, saying, hey, there's 2 corners outside of the nickel. So meaning it's going to take one of those corners to come for you to be hot. And he was talking to, I wasn't there for this, but he kind of told me the story, because I was the grunt work coach. I made copies. I was the assistant receivers coach. And he told me that, like, and your boy, Ben Utek, I don't know if he ever told you the story, but Ben Utek had a similar situation where Peyton Manning had given everybody, like I used to make the copies and then I'd hand them out to all the coaches. And you know how that goes in meetings. And so I handed all the coaches out the changes. Well, I guess Ben Utek wasn't paying attention. And so they get out there on the field. Peyton calls the check. Ben Utek has no idea what it is. And so instead of like, it's practice, instead of saying, oh, wait, what is that? Yeah. He just runs like straight. He's like, you know what? I'm going to just clear out the seam. Like, maybe I'm right. And Peyton, and then it was actually like supposed to be to him. He was supposed to like hook up. And then I think Reggie was going to run like a deep or a short over behind him. Well, he throws it at the back of Ben Utek's head. and hits him with the ball. And then later, UTEC tells a story later, Peyton, like in the breakdown, whatever, bring it up, team. Right above. He's like, and some of y'all need to put down the guitar and stop singing and pick up the playbook. So when you say that, the hut, and then somebody jumps. So were you the guy that jumped off sides?
Oh, I mean, we all were. Yeah, a few times. And I've run the wrong hot as well. It's funny you say that because he'll mic someone just to make, the guy guarding you the hot. So
right.
To make the adjustment, right? And so he'll sit in the line, he'll stare at you because he wants you to point him out, like, hey, he's right here. He just stares at you. He's like, you gonna talk? Next guy, and he'll just replace you. Just like,
oh yeah.
It's like, oh, that's when I think it made it. And we talk about his personality, like when he's on the field, he really is the general. He is, coordinating practice. He is manipulating stuff. Off the field, just a dry humor, fun guy to be around. And it's a good mix because you learn, like, when you work. And when you're off the field, you got to enjoy the process as well.
And 7 years ago, Peyton Manning did the Michael Orr spoof. I had never seen that until now because, of course, Michael Orr is famous again for his family not really adopting him and doing a conservatorship. But Peyton Manning did. I don't know if you saw that, but he's like, he walks up, Sandra Bullock is like the movie, but then he's spoofing himself in there like, wait a minute, I'm Peyton Manning. I have houses. I don't need to come to your house. And he goes to his house. And then, like, in the end, he's like hiding behind the couch as she's looking for him. And he's calling Eli. And Eli is an Ole Miss guy. So that's what people don't understand. It's a double joke because Eli's laughing because, he's stuck in this house with some lady trying to force him to play quarterback for Ole Miss. And he's like, Eli, it's not funny. Stop laughing. He's like, this lady keeps calling me Big Mike, and so it's like a whole spoof about it. So his humor, you can see it. And I always knew like it was weird, funny, like, because he would do stuff all the time. And the coaches, we'd sit in the meeting room like, what is he talking about? But the one thing I will say, though, is transitioning to a different quarterback. You played and you were blessed. I tell Adam Weber this all the time. I wish I could have had a consistent quarterback for 3 years. I had Billy Cockrum, I had Andy Persby, then I had Asad Abdul-Khalik, and then I had a transfer in Travis Cole my senior year who came in from a JUCO in California because Asad, I don't know if you ever met Asad Abdul-Khalik, but he was immature. He was a very immature third year. He was his third year by then, but he was immature. So I think Glenn Mason was kind of like, look, we might need to get a quarterback in here. And so he gets a JUCO transfer, who ends up starting like 8 games, him and Assad split time. But you were blessed to have Adam Weber for 3 years. Adam Weber, 10,000 yards, one of the best Gopher quarterbacks in history. How cool was that, though, to have like a consistent quarterback, even though, because I know your offenses might have changed a little bit with Jed Fish and some other guys, but you still had your QB the whole time. How was that?
Yeah, no, it was awesome. The first time I met Adam was actually at that camp, in the summer at Minnesota in high school, and just kind of we even hit it off then. And I know he was being looked at, not signed yet, and then coming in, having him for really the tenure of my career was, like you said, just to have that consistency. And we built a really strong friendship. So you have that trust off the field. It translates so well on the field. And, we had our own shares of bumps with, we had a new coordinator about every year. And so for him, just the challenge to learn a new system, a new language, obviously telling what the line what to do, receivers, understanding everybody's role. But at the same point, we knew we could rely on each other. And I think that was the takeaway for my career was I was definitely blessed to have him there the whole time through my career, and someone that was super consistent, someone that was super successful at the college level.
And I remember 2009 because that was my first year working with the Big Ten Network. So I was able to cover some games. I did Michigan State. So I've talked to Kirk Cousins about that because that was Kirk Cousins' kind of first year getting a chance to start. He split time with Keith Nichols. So Kirk and I have had that conversation. And then I remember 2009 as well. I got to have Eric Decker join us in the booth. I don't know if you remember that, but you came up to the booth. I don't know if it was the Illinois game maybe, but you had just gotten hurt. We kind of announced it to the world that, you were going to be done and you were going to have surgery and get ready for the NFL. You only played 8 games that year. And I think I did like 3 or 4 Gopher games that year on the Big Ten Network. But the one thing I do remember is, man, in 8 games, you already had 50 catches. There's guys that don't get 50 catches at Minnesota in 12 or 13 games. You had 50 in 8. The year before you had 84. So you were probably headed towards 250 catches, probably 3,600 yards, probably 35 touchdowns because you finished with 5. You probably would have had at least 10. So maybe 31 touchdowns or 29 touchdowns. But when that injury happened, do you think that like helped you just mentally start preparing for the NFL, or do you kind of wish you can go back to that time and get it back?
I wish I could get it back. I think I struggled the last 2 years with injuries. I remember my junior year, just the same thing, an ankle injury that kind of lagged on for the rest of the year towards the end. And then obviously my foot, the Liz Frank, that ended my college career. I mean, it was two things. I was burnt out mentally and emotionally from playing baseball and football. And I think, in the long run, it probably was the best thing for me. It made me shut down and kind of, though I was probably depressed and like angry and all these different emotions, I was able to like focus on myself and get my body into a professional state. That was my mindset, was like, all right, let's just attack this. And I got I got my surgery in November, and then I went to Arizona in December to start rehabbing and getting ready for the draft. So it was nice to get kind of a fresh, breath of fresh air, going to Arizona, somewhere warmer, somewhere different, and just kind of being focused on myself. And so I think that really helped the transition, truthfully, mentally and emotionally. Because if I didn't, it would have been football season, bowl game, right into, combine training, and I just would have been so burnt out. So, I think it was kind of in God's plan to kind of give me that time, though it affects me still today, but mentally to be in the right spot.
Yeah, because if you think about it, when you look at the NFL draft, and you use the word that I like there, and not like, but I'm glad you said it. You hit a bout of depression. It was tough. And, I know PJ Fleck talks about rowing the boat, and a lot of guys can look back on their life and say, oh, because now when PJ does interviews now, I think he's starting to open up. He not admits, but he kind of is quick to say like, yeah, my son had passed away and I had to figure out how to get out of bed every day. That was kind of your roll the boat moment after your foot injury. So when you're going through that process of like having to get out of bed every day, just realize, you know what? Because I know there probably some thought like, is my career over? Am I going to get drafted now? Are people going to question if I'm good enough to play or healthy enough to play in the NFL because it's 2 years? So yeah, what was that mental state like at that time?
Yeah, I think for me, just to get healthy again for myself, so I could walk again and feel comfortable. But then I was nervous going in because, truthfully, a white receiver from Minnesota, like, probably not the most attractive thing. I want to see him run. Is he actually quick? He's not playing, he plays a different style. And so that was, the challenge to me was, okay, well, I'm going to try to dominate, just the interviews, the testing, and really bench press is the only thing I could do in the combine. But just show up and be myself and show that, like, intelligent-wise, I have it. Physicality-wise, it's a question. You're taking a chance, but I know that it's there. It's just that I need someone to take a chance on me. And so I was fortunate enough to get with a good agent, to get into a good place to do first my surgery, but then my physical therapy rehab. And, thank God I ended up in Denver and didn't know where I would be, but that was a great place to go as well, with kind of the doctors that were there and the training staff that kind of helped even just get me through training camp into that first season. Because it really took me a full year to get healthy. And I think that place, I didn't feel a lot of pressure where I was drafted, because Demaryius was the first round draft pick. They had Brandon Lloyd, they had Jabbar Gaffney. So they had some veteran guys that did make me feel like I needed to show up and perform year one. So that was, again, just kind of the synopsis of really that 6-month window of getting to the season.
And you were drafted to the Minnesota Twins. You're a Minnesota kid. So the Vikings probably would have been one of your thoughts, like, man, I'd love to play for my hometown team I grew up watching. But then also the Minnesota Twins. I know you're a baseball guy. Was there any like inkling in your mind to say, maybe I should do this baseball thing?
Well, what's funny is I called Joe Mauer. I was like, what made you choose baseball or football? Well, first of all, he's first overall. So that makes a whole lot of sense. But I think his passion lied in baseball. And, for me, that was my first passion when I was young. I was like Kirby Puckett made over. That's who I wanted to be. Excuse me. But then when I got into high school, I got to the team sport. I mean, football is special. And that's why it's probably one of the greatest sport in our country today, is because of the team aspect, the physicality of it, and just, what it brings to Sundays and every other primetime day. but like my heart was in football. Like I loved it. And I also knew that lifestyle wise, it was what I wanted, more consistency. I was practicing all week, played a game. Baseball, you can be on the road for 2 weeks. And I'm a family guy. I wanted to have kids. And I know how tough it would be just to kind of have both. And so those, I think things steered me into the direction of football. And I also wasn't like that great at baseball that I wouldn't have been stuck in the minors forever, because I probably would have. And so I think that too was like, you know what? I'm probably more developed and better skilled at football right now. Like this is the path I want to go.
I think he made a good choice. I think he made a great choice. When you look at, and you talked about that, having kids and family, you are married to a celebrity. And, first, did you go after her, or did she see you somewhere and come after you?
Well, a quick story how we met. Actually, I was in Arizona training. A friend of mine who I was training with was talking to this girl in Arizona. She said she had a friend. I'm like, great, I'd love to meet your friend. Ended up being Jess, who was living in Tennessee at the time. And so we connected over the phone at first. And, at that time, 23 years old, I'm young and single. And it was the best thing for us. Like, we just had 2-hour conversations for like 3.5 weeks. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to fly to Nashville and come meet you. And so that's how we met, just kind of a whim of friends that, somehow met each other. They like just met this girl like at some charity event and like barely stayed in touch with just as wild how it all came together. But, fortunate enough that we got connected, and honestly, we just hit it off. And, 2 months after we actually met in person, I'm like, you're going to come to Denver with me for this season. And the rest is history. Oh,
so you told her she has to come.
But I was chasing. I was definitely chasing. Like, you kind of have this, and I told her forever, I'm like, I just want to be single. I want to be able to travel. She's like, okay. So like, she wouldn't call me for the first 2 months. She did not call me. She did not text me first. She had me chasing, and I was chasing hard.
So it's fun to sit down with Eric Decker. Love everything about him. Also, we got Eric Decker coming up again tomorrow, so make sure you tune in for the rest of that part 2 of this interview. Just a lot of content. Eric Decker had a lot of great stuff to say, some stuff we didn't even put on camera, like the Peyton Manning conversations and the Gopher conversations. Just a wealth of knowledge. Talked about the Jets, how he's all in. You saw the hat. He's all in with the Jets now after being out there. But people, I want you guys to remember, SiriusXM is a proud partner of Locked On Sports. The Twins will play the Guardians, and this is the time we've been talking about. They have to win these in order to clinch. But they're going to play the Guardians this evening at 5:10 p.m. Catch every pitch of the hometown broadcast on the SXM app. Just make sure you download the SXM app on whatever platform you're using, and then just search Twins. Well, now it's time for the Daily 3. Like I said, with Eric Decker, we got 3 questions, 3 minutes each, but might be a little bit shorter. Take it away, Sam.
Well, the biggest news in college football over the weekend, Colorado goes in 20-point underdogs into TCU. Deion Sanders at the helm, Deion Sanders' son at quarterback. And they beat the Horned Frogs in an instant classic, 45-42. Are you, Ron Johnson, officially a believer in Coach Prime?
I've been a believer in him from the start. The only thing I was worried about, and he even brought that up, was the trenches. Because when you watched practices, like there's no question, like Travis Hunter, we know how big and tall he is. We know how big and tall Shiloh is. The other problem too is what people forget, because everybody's like, man, his players look small and blah, blah. Do you see how big his coaches are and some of the people he has on that staff? Like his security guards are huge. His coaches are huge. Like he has Tim Brewster's not a little dude. So when you got all these big coaches, like he don't have no little DB coaches on his, like Deion's probably one of the smallest coaches out of his staff. Like everybody on his staff is bigger than him. And then you put all these because it's Deion Sanders, let's be real. So he has security, he has people that follow him. He has also people that help him because he's had some toe stuff. But people worried about the size of his players. Well, one, you get Shedeur out of the pocket, so that eliminates a little bit of that immediate rush. Shadeur's son at quarterback is a really elusive QB. So anytime they rushed him, it was kind of like he was getting loose. Like you just could, and he looked so calm and confident. Like I know Tom Brady's his new mentor as far as quarterback goes, and this is NIL partnership with TB12. But he never looked out of sorts. He always looked under pressure. I watched most of the game, and he always looked calm, cool, and collected. Like he looked like he was ready to go. And so that's just interesting to me, that people did not think they'd be competitive. I just wasn't sure about the offensive line and defensive line. I just, when you see so many guys transfer, they had over 50 guys that are new that came into the team. You just don't know what you're going to get. And again, this is TCU. They're going to probably beat Nebraska, but they still got some big games coming up. So I just hope that, the hype train rolls with them, but then also when they lose, it's okay. Like, because people are waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that's the problem, though, with like his son, Deion Sanders Jr. Like, great, you guys won. Great, you're trying to put it, people didn't believe in a lot of people, though. This is not new to sports. Like, you guys aren't the black sheep of sports. Like, there's a lot of teams that people didn't believe in and they end up winning the game. Like the Pistons. People didn't think the Pistons would win back with Ben Wallace and that group and Tayshaun Prince. Like, it was a bunch. I mean, look at that team. Like, it was an unopportune group. And they end up winning the championship. So there's been people that have been underestimated and they still found a way to win games. So I get it, but they're getting so loud that now people are hoping they lose because they just want to go against them. But no, I was a believer. I watched the game the whole time as I hope they win this one. And I'm so glad to see Travis Hunter, because people were saying the same thing. Oh, he's not playing against, like he's playing receiver in DB in the HBCU, and the level of competition is not great in the FCS versus the FBS, and come do that in FBS. Well, he came and did it. he caught over 100 yards passing and only allowed like one reception and had two interceptions or one interception? Was it two?
One pick. I think it was one. Couple pass breakups.
I know I'm thinking of two, but yeah. So that was crazy to me. But I don't know. What do you think? Are you a believer now?
I am very interested to see the Nebraska game on Saturday. So should we cheer for Nebraska then, so it looks better for the Gophers? Because if Nebraska beats Colorado Gophers look really good, man.
True. I didn't think about that angle. I just want to see Nebraska lose because they're in the West.
Right.
And so, anytime somebody get knocked down, to make sure the Gophers are the champions. But you're right. For strength of schedule, you are right. If Nebraska, so maybe let's hope for a closer game, just like TCU, like a close one. But I don't know. I don't see Nebraska having the speed and the athletes to go with this Colorado team. They have way too many athletes on that offensive side of the ball. That running back and all those receivers are legit. So anybody that's like worried about the transfer portal, Deion went and found 4 horses, like 4. Those guys at receiver and running back were legit. I mean, that kid took that little that pop pass out the backfield and got gone. Like, I could not believe. I'm like, man, this kid was amazing. So they have 3 Heisman candidates right now. Their running back, their quarterback, and Travis Hunter. Like, I don't think anybody's had a better week 1 ever when it comes to like putting that many people in the spotlight. But it's also Deion Sanders. If this was just Colorado with anybody else and they do that, they beat TCU, I don't think it gets blown up as much as it does because it's Deion. It's the Deion Sanders effect. But I don't know what you got next.
Yeah. Coming up next, Kyle Rudolph announced he will be retiring as a Minnesota Viking after a 12-year career. His final stats for Minnesota: 10 years played, 4,400 yards, 48 touchdowns. So does TJ Hawkinson, Ron, have a chance to eventually surpass Rudolph amongst all-time great Vikings tight ends, or is Rudolph untouchable in your eyes?
I'm not untouchable, but 10 seasons. TJ Hawkinson is not going to get 10 in as a Viking. I think if he plays at least 5, he'll probably have some great Viking stats. But I don't think he'll pass like Steve Jordan. You just have to play a long time to do that stuff. But yeah, Kyle Rudolph, and you remember too, I knew he was going to retire. He kind of told me at his golf tournament. I didn't want to, that's not my job. If somebody tells me something in private, I'm not going to go out there and tell everybody about it. I should have asked him though, like, hey man, let me do the announcement. But no, him and his wife talked to me for a minute. I'm like, hey, what was your plans? He's like, yeah, I think I'm done. I think I'm gonna retire. Because he was a free agent. He said he was thinking about playing, but he also said he liked his off season, hanging out with his kids. And I think when you realize like you have money, you have your health, you like to golf in Minnesota, you love being around the Vikings and being back in town. I think it kind of gets to you like, hey, you know what, man? Like, I don't have to go out here and sweat and hurt. I'm old. So I think Kyle Rudolph is at peace, but yeah, we kind of talked about that before. He told me he thought he was done. His wife kind of said she thought he was done. And now we have the announcement. So yeah, he's going to retire Viking. I think that's fitting. Went to the Buccaneers, but that wasn't, that was just a short stop just to do something. But yeah, he'll be a Minnesota Viking. He'll be the Purple Ring of Honor. And I think people are excited to have him back in town. Clearly looks like he's going to be attending some games and stuff and being honored probably at some events, who knows what. But I don't know if TJ Hawkinson can do it. You need at least 5 years. If 5 years of, because Kyle Rudolph didn't have ridiculous amounts of passes, where I think TJ could probably have some ridiculous, maybe a 80 catch year, a 90 catch year under this Kevin O'Connell offense. Thinking about the Travis Kelce type tight end usage, I think TJ Hawkinson could hit that, but he needs at least 5 years. Like, he needs 5 years to even, be considered that. And you said Rudolph, what, 4,400 yards?
4,488. Yeah. So it's not an untouchable number.
No, it's not untouchable.
The touchdown count, Rudolph was a red zone guy. 48 touchdowns is pretty good. But if Hawkinson has 800 yards for 5 years, he's already close.
Correct.
To the,
and that's why I say 5
Yeah.
years. I was like 5 years, because maybe he gets 1,000-yard season in there as a tight end, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But it depends on how Kevin O'Connell uses them. In the red zone, you brought that up. Like, I don't know what Kevin O'Connell's red zone is going to look like this year. Is it going to be 2 tight ends? Is it going to be more Justin Jefferson trying to get one-on-one coverage? Because you don't consider him that big red zone guy. You consider him the guy that once he gets open in the red zone, he's going to score. So, that'll be interesting to see what, when they're stuck in the red zone, they have to pass. Is it a Justin Jefferson one-on-one route, or is it, hey, TJ, go line up at receiver and we're going to throw it up to you? So, yeah, we'll see Sunday, kind of get an idea of this offense. And what's the last one?
Last one, Seth Walder of ESPN made a bold prediction that Ty Chandler will take over as the Vikings' top running back by the end of the season. Do you believe that's possible?
Anything's possible. I could see why he would say that, because the same thing we're all thinking is, like, do we feel like Alexander Mattison is this explosive? The problem is when you go from Dalvin Cook to Alexander Mattison, you're like, but for the Bucs, going from LeGarrette Blount to Rachaad White, they're like, oh, okay, we're good. Like, we will be fine. We went from, perennial potential Hall of Fame candidate, Pro Bowler, to then Alexander Mattison. And I think that's the key, is like, we haven't, and he hasn't played at all this year. So what have you done for me lately is what this league is about. We've seen a ton of Ty Chandler. We feel like he could, if he gets the majority of the carries, or if he's the hot hand. I mean, I can kind of see where he's going with it, but I don't want to be captive of that, because I know that's Alexander Madison's chip right now, is that everybody's kind of feeling that way. Like, oh man, what are we gonna do without Dalvin Cook? We're gonna do it without Dalvin Cook. So, because he's made that comment. Like, I know you guys are saying that. I know I'm well aware. So we'll see if he comes out here and lays an egg and has 30 yards rushing, and Ty Chandler has 50 yards rushing, and that's how they get to the 80 to 100. And I could see it. I could see, Kevin O'Connell saying, man, look, Ty Chandler is better per carry average. Maybe we give this kid more carries. He's our guy. But you just never know, man. This league is weird. You really don't know who gets hot and when they get hot. I know, like the Dallas Cowboys, when they drafted Marion Barber in the 4th round, they didn't know he was going to be their guy, but he ended up being their guy. Like, you just never really know. But I don't know. Before we get out of here, do you think he will do it?
Yeah, it's going to require Chandler to make a big impact in a smaller amount of carries, because if there's 25 carries to go around, I think that Madison gets like 17 of them to start. So Chandler's going to have to make his splash in like 8 or 9 carries, I think, right away. If he can do that, then I think that they could start evening out those carries a little bit more. But the thing is, I believe they trust Madison as a 3-down back. I think he's going to be on the field a lot on 3rd down. So there's not going to be as much opportunity for a guy like Chandler to show out right away. So he'll have to really be efficient in those few carries he gets to make that impact.
Well, that'll do it for us today on the Ron Johnson Show. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow for the rest of the Eric Decker Part 2 interview. And as I mentioned, we're going to change the format up a little bit with the Ron Johnson Show. You're going to get it once a week. That way, feel like you guys can consume it more, get more downloads, share, tell everybody about it. And then you don't have to worry about trying to catch up to every single guest. We're going to spread them out. I think that's going to be a better format for us. So make sure you guys check out the Minnesota Football Party 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. Get your Vikings fix with Arif Hassan, Luke Inman, Luke Brahms, Sam Ekstrom on Locked On Sports Minnesota. And again, I'm Ron Johnson. That's Sam Ekstrom. This was the Ron Johnson Show. I want to thank you guys. Have a great day.